Welcome to A Photographer's Life, the channel that takes you behind the curtain into the world of professional architectural photography. Join us now for an episode with some of America's premier architectural photographers. Today's broadcast comes from a recent Zoom meeting of the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This discussion is led by AIAP Director Alan Blakely. We hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. Now, on with the show.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the September AIAP Zoom meeting. Today we're going to talk about the anatomy of a photo shoot. We kind of want to talk about what happens from the front end to the back end of a successful photo shoot and the things that go into making it successful. This is a question that I've had from a few of the younger shooters who joined AIAP. They've had questions about what do I do on the front end and when I make first contact and getting a contract and putting together an invoice and then also the logistics of a photo shoot. So if we can kind of talk through that today, I think it would be helpful to a lot of the members, most of whom chose not to be with us today, but are hoping that we have some insights that they can pick up on once this recording gets posted. So welcome to everyone. I appreciate everybody joining us today. And I know that you've all got other things you could be doing. So thanks for being here. And let's kick this off. Just as far as when you get that first phone call, what are some of the questions that you ask of someone when they call and ask for or tell you that they have a project that they want? I know there was a photographer that I assisted early on in my career, and I'll tell you that what he used to ask was, "What's your budget?" And I don't think that's the right answer. So maybe we could start off with maybe a more intelligent question or questions that we should ask people when they give us a call. Anybody want to kick us off here? Yeah, Norman.
Yeah, I just did one yesterday. I usually ask them, when they're inquiring, they usually tell you what they want shot, like what type of space it is. It was a commercial venue. So my question is, how many final shots are you looking for? And the timeline. Those are the two most important things to me because we stay pretty busy, and if I can't do it, I like referring it to somebody else. And if they're looking for a price, if they tell me, I'm looking for 10 final shots, and the other thing to know, like if it's a venue, this one, it was it had a restaurant and a bar. Are we shooting, is it an architectural shoot or is it a lifestyle shoot? Is it a commercial shoot using talent? Because that's a different shoot to me. I have to have different people. I have to have, I bring different equipment. So I need those things so I can give somebody a quote, but pretty simple, straightforward. And I always ask what your bid budget is. That's not a bad question though, because think about it. When you say, everybody always gives you the same answer. I don't know. But if you say, well, if I told you that the photo shoot was going to cost you $3,000, what would you say? Is that too much? Or if I told you the photo shoot's $10,000, everybody has a budget and everybody has an idea what they want to spend. And the idea, and the other thing that a lot of people do, they'll just respond by email or text. Pick up the phone and call them. That leaves a really big impression on them. You're developing a relationship, and I do that same thing. When I ask what your budget is, the last thing I asked, do you have a budget? And I don't know what but I ask them that. If I say it was 3,000, is that too little? Is that too much? Is that right? You can feel them out and find out where they're at, but everybody has a budget.
The thing I do is I ask them to describe to me what the photo shoot is. Can you describe to me what the scope of your project is? And then I'll make some notes. And like you say, it's always better in a phone call. And sometimes that doesn't always work out so well. But I always ask that question, please, can you describe the scope of your project? And once I know what the scope is, and like you say, if it's a lifestyle shoot with people in the shots, that's way different than me showing up and shooting straight architecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the
If
key
they're
is,
using talent, are they using a director? Are you bringing the director?
Yeah,
Are
am
you
I going to cast him? Am I going to have to
Yeah,
direct him?
exactly.
All that kind of
You
stuff.
direct, yeah, it's a big deal.
I think that, yeah, Norm's right about being on the phone because you let for me, I let the client, the potential client, speak as much as they can at the very beginning, so I can get a sense. Is this somebody that has a lot of experience setting up photo shoots? Is it just an assistant? Have they been around for a while? Are they used to commissioning photo shoots, or is it just somebody's the first time they've hired a photographer? Then I get a sense of what they might be wanting to charge, what I can charge. I look at their website to see the degree of quality that they've hired in the past. So I think the key is definitely being on the phone with them, but getting more information from them by just expressing what they're looking for in the project.
For me, I'd like to see a marked up a floor plan with uh, with some vistas, especially if it's an architect. They already have some idea of where they think the better vistas are. And so that helps me a lot in understanding how much is involved. And then, like you guys are saying, are people going to be involved in the shots? A lot of architectural shooting I see going on nowadays, they want people in the shots, walking through, being blurred, et cetera, et cetera. And it's great to know ahead of time, is that going to be involved? Because it is a different animal. It really is.
Yeah, it's really important if they're using talent. And I mean that, like, if they are they pulling somebody from the office to sit in? Because when you're using talent, people that are professional models, actors, they're familiar with this, they take direction, they know how to pose, they know how to posture, they know the looks to give. It goes so much easier trying to get someone from the office to fill that role, because then you, the photographer, you become the director and the producer, and you're trying to, you know, you're actually sitting in, like Mary Bethel, my business partner, she'll actually show them how to pose and show them how to sit, and that takes a lot more time than if we had a professional on site.
Do you guys, uh, for for people on site, do you collect a model release from all of the people involved in the shoot?
Yeah, if it's a professional, they provide it for you. If you're working with a modeling agency, they'll have an agent, and the agent will send that ahead of time, and you'll have all that paperwork ahead of time. If it's office staff, that you should have a copy of your own that you should have them sign off on.
If you just get like the back of heads of people and or you blur them, either way, if you have people in the shot, but there's no way anyone can tell who that person is, do you still need a release?
No,
Yeah.
How many of you approach the subject? How many of you approach the subject of usage rights and who holds the copyright in that first conversation? If it's somebody I've never worked with before, I like to really make it clear up front that I keep the copyright to the images, and they would be purchasing usage rights.
yeah, I
And
don't.
how,
I never do work for hire. I give it to somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's
well,
a conversation you need to have up front is what
you got to have it up front. Exactly. You can't just blow by it and not mention it, because it could really come back to bite you later.
in my experience has been, even if you do have it up front, it comes back to bite you. So,
Yeah, that's true. I don't know how many times you have to explain it, but more than once, that's for sure.
yeah, I think that's when you talk about price, there's so many factors that go into it, and licensing is obviously one of them. And there's a lot of variables in licensing that we can talk about, and everybody does it differently. But that's certainly one of the things that we need to talk about. And I've had people, within the last week, where I said, this price I'm giving you is for a single party license.
Mhm.
It's non-transferable. Click. That was
Yeah.
the
Oh, really?
conversation.
Yeah, I put that in my quote: single party, multi-party.
Yeah.
I actually put that in there. Yeah,
Yeah, and
I get that idea from you, Alan. It was really good.
I think that and I've had to amend, and this is kind of a sideline. I don't want to get too far down this tangent, but I've had to amend my licensing again, because I've had another little wrinkle in some casework that has been going on, and so I could paste that into the chat window here if anybody's interested in what that says now. But I found that I need to put that on the estimate and on the invoice and on the image transmittal. When I send them images, whether it's through Dropbox or WeTransfer or whatever, and on the statement, so that there's no chance that they're going to say, well, we didn't know about the licensing on this, because the casework that I've had over the last couple of years, I've had to be so careful and make sure that things were really buttoned up as far as the licensing information.
The way that I broach that, Alan, is I say one of the questions that I ask up front is, who else might be interested in using these images? If we can package a co-licensing deal, I might be able to save you a lot of money. So I frame it as a benefit to them, and sometimes that's really successful. And
yeah, I think most of us put together a multi-party licensing package, and boy, that's just extra money that we need to take advantage of. So yeah.
Not only extra money, but it's also future clients.
Sure.
Because they have work that they might do with other people, and you just build your base that way.
And let me just mention, as we all know, we're frustrated with a lot of photographers at the lower level that give images away. They just say, "Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want," and so it's an educational process, and I think it's our duty to educate our clients and educate other young photographers that we come across to mention the usage is not just passed, that's just not given away. Multi-party usage is very important in the longevity and the sustainability of our industry.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple.
Yeah, good point, David. Thank you.
I was going to say, another question that I ask up front is concerning people, is not just who might want to use these images, but who else might need to be in the images. Do you have so sometimes I'll set up a 4-light studio on site, and between my sunrise and sunset shots, I'll find a window of opportunity in there, and I can photograph the architect that's involved in the project and the owner, maybe job superintendent, and all of a sudden, now you've pulled people into your shoot, and everybody wants their photo in their building. And I found that to be really helpful, not just from selling more images, but if this thing goes to publication, those headshots can end up being invaluable.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, I tried, like if someone wants a headshot during an architectural shoot, I really try not to do that. I'm there to shoot architectural. That's where my headspace is at. And I don't, and to be distracted by setting up studio lights and finding a spot and blah, blah, blah. I'd rather just do that another time. Like I try and schedule that separately, because that's a separate shoot to me. I even price that differently than I do my architecture.
Oh yeah, it's an ad for sure. And
Oh yeah, it's an ad, but it's
I've been known to bring one of my my headshot specialists with me.
Oh, you got a team.
Yeah. Well, I have friends that I can pretend are on my
It
team.
sounds like he's from the mob. I got friends.
So,
Yeah.
Norman, to piggyback on that, I had a shoot up in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and the client was an architect, and I've been shooting for him about 20 years, and he wanted individual photos of his staff, and then a group shot and then he says, well, then we'll just go to the main shoot, which we're doing, architectural shoot. And I had to really get my mind around it, because it is tough. You drive up there, you do the shoot of the individuals, which is totally different, obviously lighting and so on. And then you take a little break to go to your next location. So mentally, you really got to get psyched up for switching from one to another. So I agree, to stay in that zone that we are and not jumping back and forth, but whatever it takes.
Yeah, I did a commercial shoot in Chicago where some tech company, and the first thing I did to get out of the way, and we did it in the warehouse. We set up a backdrop and we shot them in the warehouse, and then we found a spot on site in the offices, which much more pleasant than a warehouse. And and then we did the architectural shoot, and the benefit of that, it was a small shoot. I mean, they were looking at like, 8, 9 shots, so it wasn't a big deal. But some places, when you're working with a builder and it's an expansive place, a residence, for instance, and they're looking to get 30 to 50 images, that's a couple of days work, and I don't have time for that.
One thing that I have done with those, that this is the one case where I do tend to give away an image, is that I arrive on site and I tell my architect I'm going to do this ahead of time. When I arrive on site, I ask the owner and maybe their job representative, hey, where's the best place to set up a 4-light studio? The architect has asked me to provide a headshot for you free of charge as a thank you for accommodating us today.
I don't do headshots, but one of the things I do is whoever is the representative of my client, I always take some fun shots of them while I'm going around. Like if I'm going through an office and I'm getting all parts of this big headquarters office, the marketing coordinator or whoever it is that is showing me around, I always make sure I get a picture of them in their little area of work, and then I give that to them for free as a thank you, and they always love it. It's a public relations thing.
You guys are a bad influence. I don't give anything.
Yeah, well,
I'm in this
people
system.
are nicer than others.
Well, I wanted to ask Kevin, what town are you in, or what city
How
are
big
you
it in
in?
here? I mean,
I'm in Abilene, Texas, Central Time Zone. So here's why I do that. It's 100% for my benefit. That owner is all of a sudden the most cooperative person you can imagine. They're pulling their staff in, they're bending over backwards, they're cleaning up and staging stuff for you, because the first thing you did when you walked on site is explain to them how you're there to be a benefit to them. And all of a sudden it's like, I can't tell you what it does. It's kind of fun to watch. I smile sometimes at the reaction that I get from that.
Let's talk
bad
about site
influence.
prep.
Alan.
Yeah, let's move on to site prep and getting ready for the photo shoot and things like that. I did a shoot this week where I showed up, and this shoot has been postponed for 5 months now, and I showed up and the place was still not ready. But it was do or die, and I shot it anyway. But what do you do to make sure that the site is ready for you, and are there things that you can do to ensure that it is ready? Has anybody got a magic formula?
I always request that someone either, that there's a representative from the company I'm working for be on site, or that they've gone there the day before to make sure the shoot's ready. Because that happens to me a lot, Alan, where it's a nightmare, and you're right, it's do or die. You got to do it, but I hate that.
Sometimes you have to shoot on a certain day because, like for instance, I did a airplane hangar, and the next day the military was taking over, and no one was ever going to be allowed in there again to take a shot. So it didn't matter, how ready it was. But my agreement always calls for 24 hours before the shoot, you confirm for me that the site is as good enough that you will accept the pictures I take. I don't word it quite like that, but because they might rather have that shot that where the site isn't perfectly ready than never get a shot, because they know that's the best they can do. But I want them to assure that and not tell me that, oh, well, this was in the way of the picture, so we don't like the picture. No, that's what you wanted.
Yeah, I don't ever like to assume liability. There's two things I do. One of which is in my quotation. One of the terms of me shooting it is that they that they guarantee that the site is photo ready, and so that's in my terms in my quotation to them. And the next thing I do is I send out a pre-shoot checklist, and it's a long one, and I expect them to go through that and then confirm back to me that everything on that checklist has been taken care of. And I have an on-site contact who has verified that, who will then be the one responsible if anything on that checklist is not correct. Despite that, I still have hiccups like I had this week, where I get there, and the architect who has confirmed to me that everything's ready is kind of clueless about things, and I have to make it work regardless. But I do have the checklist has been something that I've used for a number of years, and it works with residential as well as commercial. In fact, I have two of them, but I send those out, and it goes through all these details about things that I've just found that tend to be problems that when you arrive on site and find, like hoses and light switches and all these kinds of things that you fight with once you get on site and are frustrated with. So I use those two things, but I find that putting it in the quotation to them, saying that they're going to guarantee that everything is photo ready, places that burden on them, and they're a lot more likely to make sure that that is the case.
Yeah, and we'll offer a staging service. My business partner, Mary Beth, she's a graphic designer. She can shoot too. She's pretty good. But my wife is, she's not an interior designer, but between the two of them, they're very good at staging. We've been doing this for 30 years. So if they want to pay us additional fee, we'll come in the morning before, or the evening before, and we'll have it ready to shoot when we're there. But that's a service we provide, because a lot of people, they don't, if you're working there, to them it looks clean, and you've got all the little shotskis and stuff on people's desks, things, and it's like my desk right here. I've got a million things on it. I never shoot this office, but to them it's clean. So it's nice to offer that service. It's a nice add-on too.
Well, that's why I usually go scout the location with the
Yeah,
client.
that's a
We
good
take
idea.
scouting photos. So the scouting photos, they have those to see what the space looks like. I can kind of give an overall what needs to be done. If it's still under construction, it's supposed to be done in a couple of weeks. We kind of get that idea. But I need to do a little better at sending out that checklist for sure. But
Yeah,
the scouting makes all the difference.
I got my checklist from Alan 30 years ago. When Alan, I was a portrait photographer, and I had this architectural shoot coming up, and I'm trying to find somebody to help me, and Alan helped me. He said, Norman, do this, get a camera, get a tripod. He gave me just like these things and told me what to do. And then he sent me a checklist too, and I still have it. And so I think I took your name off and put mine on it, Alan, but
That's okay.
that's the one I send off.
That works.
He's used to that.
Yeah. Yeah,
one thing Phil mentioned about having a floor plan, and I think specific to architects, architects like to always have a Zoom meeting with me for some reason. And I find that really helpful to have that Zoom meeting with the floor plan, and let's go through this. Let's walk through this virtually. And if I can't walk through it, with them, in reality, let's go virtually through this and look at this space. And I do this fairly often, and a Zoom call with an architect or a design firm is really useful to me, to be able to go through that space and identify the things. And I can look at that and say, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
I appreciate your little arrows, but that shot's not ever going to work. And
Are we shooting into the sun? No, bad. Yeah.
But
I'd like to ask him for the vistas to be marked up.
yeah,
Show me what you think this should be, and it's not like I have to shoot everything. Well, I will always probably shoot the vista they want, but I may see something else in the same spot that if I just move the camera 7 or 8 feet over to the left, I've got a better view of
right.
telling the story of the architecture. And there are some times that they'll actually pick the shot that I took that they didn't ask for instead of the one they wanted when they go to license.
Yeah, that's most of the time. And Phil, how many guys ask you what a vista is?
If it's architects, they understand.
Well,
No,
They know
no,
very well what a vista is.
no, architects don't understand. Architects put a whole mess of arrows on a plan, and they aren't looking through a viewfinder. They have no idea what you're going to see from that arrow. And just humor the architect when they give you a floor plan with a whole lot of arrows. Say, oh, thank you. This will be very helpful. And then just carry it around with you in case anyone comes by to look. and walk around the building and take all the shots that you know are the best ones and ignore those arrows.
Yeah, well, I don't ignore
That's
the arrows.
spoken from an career
And Glenn,
architect.
this is coming from a former architect, so he's
That's
telling
Yeah,
right.
well, I'm a career architect, yes,
Yeah.
and forget them. Just stroke their ego as if they know what they're doing and pretend like it was helpful.
yeah,
And then
use the
ignore
word
it and
genius a
do it.
lot. They like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, and
Exactly.
in the end, that's what they expect from us anyway, is to use our best judgment. I mean, because
Oh, yeah.
those arrows are generally in the corners of all the rooms, and we don't really want to stand in a corner and shoot. So, but really, I think part of that conversation when it goes back to, talking with them and having the phone call is what's important to them. We need to understand what's important in this photo shoot. What do you want to see, and what is it you want me to capture, and what do these photographs really need to say about this space? And I can do that without arrows. So, but the arrows are fine if you want to put them in there.
Having Glenn, a former architect, on this panel, I mean, Glenn, you understand that every architectural drawing of a floor plan has a little thing in along the side called a direction arrow that tells you what direction that thing is facing, which can help you then in understanding where's the light coming from.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
should be in
No,
the title box.
yeah, I'm not saying that when they hand you a floor plan, it's not helpful. It's just that as far as trying to follow 100 little arrows, forget it. If you walk through the space and you're trying to look down at the arrow, figure out where you are and where they want the arrow, instead of walking through the space and looking through your lens and seeing where the best shots are, I mean, it'll take you forever to follow their stupid little arrows.
Not that often I have that happen.
Tell us how you really feel, Glenn.
So the
The
document.
architects I work for don't play that game.
So I'm still a licensed and practicing architect on the weekends, but the document that we need to be asking for that has all of what we need is it's called it's the brief that they give to the client right before they move into design development. It's concept design package, and that has renderings, that has a summary of the program of all of the problems that the architect was trying to solve for the client, what's critical about each space, and a quick perusal through that document will outline your photo shoot better than anything else I've found.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. If you have such an animal.
I'd
Yeah.
also like to throw in an alternate reality, and sorry for arriving late. At least I made it this time.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you, Barry.
Yeah, thank you. When I first got started, after a long career in construction and design, I was shooting the interior of a living room with the architect next to me, and I had the perfect angle. And he said, no, over here. And it was literally just moving a few feet and turning maybe 10 degrees. And we got into an argument about it because I was too stupid to know this was not worth arguing about. And I said, well, we'll do it both ways, which of course is the reasonable compromise. And once I got home, I realized he was correct. And he was correct because he'd been thinking about this room for 3 years. He knew how it should look. And that was a big lesson to me, which is at the least, take it both ways. And I always shoot more than I'm contracted for anyway. I don't think I'm alone in that, and let the architects choose what they want, which is also buy-in for them. So I get almost no pushback ever on delivering photos, except for maybe color or something like that.
And one of the things that I do too is I try to understand from a design standpoint what was important and what was a big deal to the architect, so that I don't miss anything, because there are some things that maybe they did design wise that may not be apparent to me as a photographer, but that are a really big deal to them as an architect, or an interior designer or whatever. But on the flip side of that, there's also some situations where I've done photographs and architects will say, well, I've never looked at it like that. That's really interesting. I never thought of looking at that from that perspective. And
That's as good as it gets.
yeah,
I think that's what sets the architectural photographer apart from, the weekend warriors, their composition skills. Anybody can learn camera and lighting skills, but the composing, if that comes naturally to you, I mean, you'll always be successful because composition skills are very hard to teach.
yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that's what sets a good architecture apart from any other commercial photographer is that ability to interpret those spaces, because anybody can just sit a camera down, somewhere and in a corner or whatever and shoot the space, but interpreting
And they
that
often
space,
do.
and then mostly that's what happens. Absolutely.
My
But
client this week had pictures taken of his building straight on every elevation,
mm,
and different people told him that they were horrible pictures and he needed better ones. So he called me up. I had done jobs for him before, and he wanted to walk around with me to see what I did, why it would be better.
mm.
And I just started taking all these perspectives, and it's like, oh, well, how come you're going from way over here in this corner instead of straight on? Well, just wait and see what the pictures look like. And he was I mean, it was a simple matter of going from flat, boring elevations to little perspectives and really big perspectives. And he loved it. And, they're using those photos, and I got an A+.
There you go.
So,
Yeah, a lot of I have several architectural clients. They'll come out on the site and and they'll shoot right next to me, and and they go, oh, it's just for personal. Oh, it's just for they're
yeah,
trying
right.
they're trying to see if they can eventually eliminate you.
Exactly.
But, when they're using a portrait lens, and you have to explain to them what a tilt shift lens is, and and why you're using lights and why you're doing this and that. It makes you smile because the investment they get from using a quality photographer. I mean, I don't know anybody. I don't have any clients that regret it, and they'll often sing your praises to other people as well. So, um, you know, it's it's the young guys that are really, no offense there, Matt. You look younger than anybody here. That are killing us, but yeah.
Well, that brings up kind of an interesting point here that I've got. I just want to go back to my outline here about kind of this anatomy of a photo shoot from start to finish. But one of the things that I have as one of the terms on my quotations with people is that there's no other photographers on site. No other
Excellent.
photographers, no other videographers on site. And that's a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
And, I will die on that hill.
I like that, Alan. That's good. No other.
Because I've had situations, and it happened a couple times where it was just out of control, where the interior designer sent a photographer, the cabinet guy sent a photographer, on and on and on. And I had one photo shoot, and this was the last one that I ever did this way, where there were 5 photographers on site, and I had a guy flying a drone next to my drone, trying to duplicate the shots I was doing for the landscaper, because I was shooting for the builder. And ever since then, that has been a hard and fast rule, that
Do you get any
nobody
pushback?
else is on site with a camera, or I'm done. I will walk away. So
You get pushback from that, Alan?
I do.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Some
Yeah.
people think that I'm being difficult about it, and I am, and I will be difficult about it till the end. But
And I am.
I like that. I'm going to add that. That's
Yeah,
excellent.
me
that
too.
is one of my terms that I shoot under, is that there are no other photographers or videographers on set the day that I shoot.
We could pull that language from our wedding photographer friends.
Yeah, it makes it just too hard. I mean, I did the shoot that I was talking about with the 5 photographers. I had somebody in there shooting furniture that was turning all the lights off, and as I was turning them on, and it just got ridiculous. And so,
Was that like a Street of Dreams? Was that kind of where it was only one day that everybody could be in there?
yeah, it was one of, they call it a parade of homes.
Yeah, same
Here
thing.
in
Yeah.
Utah was what it was. So they've got, 12 or 15 houses that are available for the public to preview, and everybody wants pictures that's involved, and they can't decide on just having one photographer do it because I'm too expensive. So they have everybody show up, and no more. So
Norman, can you help me out with the price? Can we lower that? Sure. Choose less shots.
but
It's tough. I tell you, we all have.
Don't budge.
I've been in some of those are called the Street of Dreams, and you got a competitor there. Some of them I know, some I don't, and we all have these egos of how this is the way I should be shooting it. And then you get your client there, and it's very it's not fun. It's not a lot of fun. Let's put it that way.
No, I don't do those anymore. But that was kind of the genesis of that language in my contract. Is I just don't want to be involved in that. I mean, I had a guy trying to set up a slider in the middle of my shot, and that's ridiculous. So, but that'll happen, and you may get somebody from the company that thinks that we'll just come along and shoot while he's shooting, and I've even had situations where the architect has hired me to shoot, and the builder has sent their photographer to shadow me. And that's a no-go. So
all the work that just goes into staging a room for another photographer to come in and steal that work from you with their shots.
Just stand where I stood. They still don't get the same shot, even if they do stand where I stand.
Oh, they don't, do they?
But still, it's a little aggravating. But that's one of the things I wanted to bring. I had in my outline I wanted to bring up, and that to me that's really important. But how, as far as on site, do you put any restrictions on who can be there or who has to be there? How do you work? Do you require somebody to be there, a client or anything, or do you shoot solo?
I request a representative from the company I'm shooting for to be there, but they don't have to. It's not required. And if they don't, then they have to accept whatever images I take.
Is that a clause?
I have some clients that I've worked with for
too.
so long that, they'll just give me addresses and I know the spaces are ready. And that, but if it's a new client or if it's a commercial space or I know it's going to be, a little bit of a challenge or a nightmare, I want somebody on site. But I got a lot of clients that they just give us an address list and we go.
And I would say I strongly encourage them the first time that we work together. You really should come the first time just to see what we're doing.
There's a famous quote from Ezra Stoller. He showed up to photograph a house for Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect. And sorry, it's too early for that kind of humor. And the woman who owned the house said, "Well, where's Mr. Wright?" He said, "Well, he's not here. He's in New Jersey. I think the project was in the Midwest or somewhere." And she called up Frank Lloyd Wright and said, "This guy's here to photograph the house, but you're not here." And Wright said, "Leave him alone. He knows what to do." And that was it. That doesn't really apply to any of us here, but it's an amusing story. It was told that story was told to me, I think, by Ezra Stoller's daughter, who's has Esto, which is the agency that he started. So anyway,
I think a lot of us are in this situation though, where our clients don't expect to have to be on site and handhold after the first or second time. So
I prefer, after an introduction to the whoever is on site that owns the building or whatever, after my client has introduced me to them, I would just as soon my client go away and not see them through the whole shoot. And things are kind of easier because I'm not putting on a show for the client. I literally, if I have a client with me through the whole shoot, I'll do things like maybe I don't necessarily have to lay in the tub to get the right shot. But if the client's there, I might lay in the tub to get the right shot. I might do other gymnastics and maybe I'll use those shots and maybe I won't. But I do put on a little bit of a show as if it was really, tricky, difficult, and I do special things for that client.
Glenn, I did a photo shoot behind another photographer, and everything about this guy I'm not kidding you. He brought in a cart and he had 400 pounds of gear. He had all these different cameras. He was putting on, it was so ridiculous. He set up a 4x5 camera that didn't have a film back on it. And nobody knows, right? The designer doesn't know, the magazine was there. They didn't know. I'm sitting there and I'm smiling. Me and the designer were smiling because we've been doing this for years. And he's having this guy, and he takes a couple of boards and he's doing like this in front of the lens, and she goes, "Oh, what is he doing? Oh, he's dodging out the hard light." And it's so, it was such a show. And I mean, he never even fired the shutter, and then he takes another camera and sits next to a little Canon, EOS something, and that's what he's shooting with. But it was all show, and it was just and he still does that, and he makes more money than I do. So maybe I'm doing it wrong, but
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard, Norman. It's crazy.
it is crazy. But I've been on. He's very popular in the Chicago area, and it's fun to watch.
So you're saying that he actually sets up a 4x5 or large
He
format?
sets up a 4x5, and the 4x5 he had set up didn't even have a film kit on it.
Yeah.
And or he's gonna, oh, for this room I need this camera, for this room I need that camera. It's so over the top, the theatrics, and people are just mesmerized by him, because he's explaining what he's doing, and he, use this to dodge out this, use this to dodge. All of his shots are overexposed. They're all done with natural light. His work isn't really, I mean, it's he was shooting a den, and he had to it was a dark room, so he had to overexpose the shot so much to just so you can see the furniture in it. And he goes, "This one I shot extra airy," and everybody's, "Ooh, it's airy." I spit my coffee out. I looked at Terry, I said, "No, it's called overexposed. It's not airy." And then we shot it afterwards, and everybody wanted to buy our pictures afterwards, but his were.
I didn't mean that I was that theatrical. I just am a little bit more
Yeah,
theatrical.
it's early on. If you go through my blogs, like about 10 years ago, the story's in there.
It is harder to work though with a client that just wants to stick by you all day. And my wife goes with me as a stylist, and often her main job is not really to be a stylist. It's to
Keep people away.
keep the other person away from me, so that I can.
But Alan, so I shoot with the 12-inch iPad. So when I'm shooting with an interior designer,
Mhm.
they want to be in there. They want to see the shot. They want to look at the iPad, and they want to make these little
Micro adjustments.
micro movements, whatever. So I'm okay with that because sometimes they have to be there because they're not going to accept it if it's not the way they want it. So it depends if it's an interior designer compared to an architect for a commercial building. I understand, but I guess it's based on all of our own personalities. We all have different personalities. We like people there. We don't like people there. But I like, as far as a good system for me, is having my assistant kind of sometimes distract my client and have a conversation with them. This went back to when I had a studio and I'm shooting food or whatever. My assistant's talking about just what rock and roll music or vacations, this and that. So they're not just looking over my shoulder and wanting to talk to me because I get distracted if they want me to answer these questions they're talking about. That's not necessarily has to do with photography, but it's a balance and it's based on our personalities too.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, early on, I used to use the iPad and the Cam Ranger. I don't do that anymore. I don't offer that to people anymore. They just
It really shows that it slows things up.
Yeah, they have to trust me. And in fact, there's a fairly high profile interior designer I shoot for, and he will stop by once or twice during the day, during a shoot, and that's about the extent of it. And it just trusts me to do the shoot. So I mean, my Cam Ranger's sitting on the shelf now. So, but it is a good tool.
I still bring it. Yeah, I still bring it. How many I can't stand when a designer or architect or a builder, you're working and they're taking iPhone shots for their Instagram. I make them delete every one. I hate that. I just absolutely hate that.
But Norman, if they mention you and they've got a good photo of you in the shot for Instagram, it's good
That
publicity, right?
happens, yeah.
I don't need any more work. I got plenty. I don't need that. I hate
Okay,
that.
everybody, I want you to write that down, the date and the time. Okay, for
Norman's
Norman, he doesn't need any more
extra
work.
grumpy this morning.
I always stay busy. I'm not, we always stay pretty consistent, but I can't stand that. You get this unflattering shot, you get this or that. I just don't like it.
You
So
know,
you don't have a better side than another side for you as far as a photo? No.
I'm a photographer. I don't like my picture taken. What photographer likes their picture taken? I know one, you know.
I recently did a condo, a 5,000 square foot condo for a couple that I know pretty well. In fact, I did the architecture on it 2 years earlier, and then now I'm doing the photography on it. And anyway, they talked to me about good old times the whole time. I was there 3 hours. They were talking to me the whole time. I get back, I find out that my tripod's left in a shot, in the hallway that I didn't get removed, and I would have lights on and they would turn them off, and I didn't realize they turned them off when I went around the corner. And anyway, my shots were pretty darn bad compared to usual because um, I allowed them to socialize with me the whole time and
They
just
get distracted.
Yeah, you
made
get
a
distracted
rule to
totally.
myself that no matter how much I know the client, I'm going to have to tell them, while I'm working like this, I got to focus to get you a good job.
Mm-hmm. It's a balance. Totally, it's a balance.
I have another alternate. Sorry, I'm sounding argumentative today about people, the clients with their phones. Uh, I have a client, and the marketing person always runs around. She's very easy to deal with, but she's always running around with her phone. She's either standing next to me or over somewhere else. Sometimes I have to call her over to see, is this what you said you wanted? But one of the things she does is she kind of scouts shots for me on the spot. And this is a landscape architect, so we're dealing with pretty large spaces. And I've made shots for her that nobody had ever discussed my doing before that turned out great and ended up being the choices that her bosses wanted. So I'm less fussy about the iPhone thing. It is irritating, but I like to be left alone if at all possible. But if somebody with some authority is there helping scout and improve the delivery that I'm going to give the client, I have no problem with that at all. So that's, yeah.
It's so much easier now that our hair is gray to intimidate the young people. You just look at them and give them a look like, so they leave you alone pretty easy.
I really, I'm curious how many of you do shoot tethered from time to time. I do if I've got an art director on site because I want them to see larger images, but I don't do it as a general practice.
Yeah, I'll do it if there's an art director or it's rare that I do it, but I do bring it all the time. Especially if I'm doing something, if I'm doing headshots or something like that, that's when I use it, because people want to feel confident, unless you have a confidence monitor that they can see the shot that you're framing up, it's really handy if you're doing work on site. But with architectural, it's rare that I use it for that.
My method is it depends on how much money there is in the job. If it's a job that is really going to slow me down, I'll just crank away without it. But if there's money and time, I actually find it saves my butt. It keeps me from having to spend more time in Photoshop or Lightroom later fixing something that I could have got right. I mean, in fact, once I had an assistant, I was shooting a park, and we were kind of under the gun and kind of behind schedule because the architect had not shown up with the staff that was supposed to be in the photos on time. And so I took the shot and I was getting ready to move the camera. She said, you have all these light poles are all lined up, so you can't differentiate them. And it's like a big, bar in the middle of the photo. And I went, oh my God, I would never have caught that. I wasn't even looking at the iPad, but she was, and she caught it. And, it was such an easy fix. Took a few seconds to move the camera, over to the left 10 feet, and boom, I had a decent photo. So I really like having it if there's time for it. One of the things that I am probably going to move to is, rather than having the iPad and the Cam Ranger, which is also what I use, is just getting a monitor, a 5 or 7 inch monitor that video people use all the time, put it right on top of the camera. So I have a decent screen to really look at.
Yeah, I still use the viewfinder. You know, I never look at the monitor to frame up
Oh
a
my
shot.
God. No, I never. It's always the viewfinder. But even with the viewfinder, you can still miss things.
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't there a problem though when you're showing your raw or high resolution picture to someone that, I mean, it looks like crap until you process it.
No, it's
Um,
it. Cam Ranger, you set it up so that you send you have your camera uh, set for both RAW and JPEG.
Yeah,
And
you
Cam
send a
Ranger
low res image. Yeah,
what's that?
you send a low res image.
Yeah, Cam Ranger is just smart enough to know it grabs the JPEG, and that's kind of processed, and it's good enough. And if anybody gives me any grief about it, I say, this is not a finished image, and you know they
But
get
yeah,
it.
they know that. But the key with the Cam Ranger and the iPad system compared to being tethered is the iPad, the client could walk around with it and change things and move around. And when you're tethered, you got to be down there on the computer. You're going to trip over. Everybody's got their own preference, but the iPad is a good system for me. Maybe it's not for everybody, but having that large monitor, so to speak. But I have very seen those monitors connected to the actual camera. But depends if you're shooting solo or if you got your client there.
It depends
Oh,
what you're using too. If you're using like phase one software, I mean, you want a laptop for that because you're controlling the camera, more than you can with Cam Ranger. You're
Mhm.
controlling the camera, the aperture, everything.
yeah, you could.
You do that in
Yeah,
Cam
but
Ranger, yeah.
Yeah,
not
you
to
could
the
do
extent you
bracketing.
can
You
with
could
phase
do all.
one software.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, like
yeah,
like David was saying, it is nice to walk through the shoot um, with your
yeah.
with your iPad and fix little things. And so that was one thing that was useful to me when I was using the Cam Ranger a lot. But I don't do as many of those kinds of shoots anymore. So let's move on to processing before we kind of try to wrap this up here. Everybody doing their own processing, or is anybody sending out for processing?
I do my own. It's too personal.
Yeah, I think that's a
I
really tough
send
thing to
out
send out, but some do.
I send out all of my shots.
Yeah, I don't. It's too personal. I'm really fussy.
David,
So
who do you send it to?
Okay, so
Somebody
let me just give you
reliable?
a little 1 minute review real quick. So I went to school, Brooks Institute, to spend all the time in the dark room, processing, printing, and so on. But when I started using, or had the Photoshop came out in 2004 or five for my work, I said these guys know what they're doing. I'm going to let them do it, and I don't want to shoot all day and then process at night. So we all have different priorities and lifestyles that we all have. So there's a lot of downsides to having somebody else do your work, and one is you have to pay them, you have to give them notes, but it frees me up to do more photography, frees me up to be with family. Some of my retouchers last maybe 4 or 5 years and then they get burned out, right? The one gentleman I have now, he's out of Amsterdam. I rarely, but sometimes I use this one company out of Ohio that subcontracts us to India, but that's not for processing. That's for taking out a lot of Photoshop work with the backgrounds and so on. But I am not the norm. I'm the exception as far as sending out my Photoshop work because there's no way that I could shoot at a scale that I shoot or a volume, so to speak, and then do it at night. Because I tell people I want to have a life. I don't want to just be shooting and processing. So, but I'm not
Could
the
you say
norm.
more about that having a life thing and not working at night? This is
Well,
I'd like
okay,
to
this
know.
is this is the phrase I use with some of my peers, and I was talking to Matt about this the other day because Matt's out in Salem, I'm in Portland. I said, if you want to have a life and have a wife, you can't shoot all day and then process at night. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
All right.
but
What do you say, Alan?
what you do,
Well,
David, is
I don't
you
process
don't
at
shoot
night
every
either
day.
generally, but I
Say again. Out. What say, Norma? Say that again.
I said just don't shoot every day. I mean, schedule it.
exactly,
Like
yeah.
if I shoot a project, then I'll have a couple of days to process, and I shoot another project. Like I like shooting 3 days a week,
That's the
Sometimes we have to
most I
shoot
ever
4 or
shoot
5
would be
days a week, but
3.
3 is real comfortable for me.
Usually 2 and hopefully 1. But
Well, and this is why originally why I hired it out is because I felt like the Photoshop um, technicians or digital techs really knew Photoshop inside and out. Okay. Now you might say, well, we could all learn it, but for me, I felt like these guys were the experts. They could really do it. But again, I send it out. They send me back the first edits. I send back a notes on what to do differently, and that takes time to do that. But it works for me. But it does cost a little bit more. But I'm making more money taking photos than I am in Photoshop work.
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I use the same place in Ohio, I think, that you're talking about for taking out objects and for what custom retouch. And I would never attempt all that kind of stuff on my own. I've got a pretty streamlined process as far as my processing goes. But if there's any kind of custom retouch, I don't burn up a day doing something that I could send to somebody else and do. So
Yeah, I'm the other way. I do it all myself. It's too personal. Mary Beth, my business partner, her and I, we've got a system, and yeah, it works for us. It's slower than probably anything you guys do, but our clients love it. I like it, and it just works. So
Yeah, but Norm, don't you just give your client like usually like a dozen pictures or something like that?
no, I have some clients that we shoot. In fact, I just did a builder. We shot a house, and in the contract, he wanted a minimum of 50 images. So you know, it's a lot of work, but they pay well. I mean, we're not cheap, so we get paid for it. But it's just too personal for me to send it to somebody else. I can't see somebody. I would look at it and find a million things that they didn't do. So,
I have control issues, and this helps satisfy my control issues. I mean, because
there you go, Billy. Why is that hard to believe?
No, I think yeah, well, the deal is to figure out ways to do it quickly, and that's
Yeah.
why I think 80% of everything I do or more is in Lightroom, and Lightroom gets better and easier and faster all the time. So I'm
Lightroom's
actually
for babies.
what's that?
Lightroom's for babies.
no,
Well, dude, we'll have to sit down one day and try to.
I know.
That's the
You know what?
best
You know what
tool
it
I
is.
use.
I can't get around in Lightroom. It frustrates me. I use Photoshop.
Lightroom is the best tool I have.
Oh
Yeah,
my
there you
God.
go.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's super fast, and you're working on raw images, which means
Yeah.
you're by default getting fewer artifacts. But we're not here to be gearheads, or are we? Um, uh, but yeah, I like doing it. And then I send it to Photoshop. But I will say every now and then I'll run into something where I had to show. Very dominant in the photo was a giant window with about 12 or 18 lights in it, and they wanted something else behind it, and I couldn't fathom the marching ants for that, and so that one I hired somebody else to replace the background of that photo.
Let's switch gears here real quick and just kind of towards wrapping this up and talk about the end of the photo shoot as far as getting paid, which is what it's all about in the end anyway for me. And invoicing and making sure that you get paid. Is there anybody that's got a secret for this? Because I'll tell you what I do, and that's I make everything. If it's somebody I haven't worked with before, they make the payment when they download the images. And so that's the way they get the images, is they have to actually make that payment. If it's somebody I have worked before, my terms are that it's due on receipt. I don't spend I don't do net 30 or whatever I used to do when I was a commercial photographer, which ended up being net 120. I expect to be paid right away, either immediately or within 30 days on things like that. Anybody else got any secrets as far as getting paid on your work?
Well, does anybody else do deposits? I mean, I always do a 50% deposit based on the estimate, so that helps.
Yeah, that deposit is nice. Sometimes, depending on the scope of the shoot, we'll get the shooting fee up front, and that way we're paid for the shooting fee, and then we'll deliver the images on receipt. So, I never have a problem doing that. I know a lot of photographers and my competitors, they net 30 everything, and that makes it difficult when I'm bidding against somebody. They go, oh, the terms, 'cause sometimes the terms are a big deal. They want that 30 days to pay. And if I know them and they're a good client, I'll do that. But most of the times I'll get a deposit or the shooting fee up front, and then just bill them on receipt.
Unless it's a giant job, I typically get 50% upfront. It's called an initial payment. Used to call it a deposit, used to call it a retainer. Is explained to me that those are legal terms of art that allow the client not to pay you.
Yeah, you shouldn't
So,
use the word deposit. You should use retainer. Yeah.
well, or not even that.
Not even that if you came
Now I
across.
use initial payment. Anyway, so if it's a corporate client, uh, or someone I haven't worked for before, where I think there might be a problem later on in terms of getting paid, I will put a little phrase right below the due amount that says payment made within 7 days or 5 days of final delivery, 3% discount. And in corporations, if it gets to the bookkeeping department beforehand, they are sometimes obligated to take any discount they can get.
Yeah, they'll jump on that.
Yeah, it doesn't always work. I did that once with a trade magazine, and I got paid everything up front, which was strange. And then the next time I worked for them, it took 90 days to get paid. So there was no real logic to it, but I stick it in there, and sometimes it helps.
Yeah, my legal term that I use is an assignment confirmation for the deposit, and that confirms the
that's
assignment.
good.
That confirms the
What do you
assignment.
say, Ellen?
I like that.
I call it an assignment confirmation,
Assignment confirmation. I like
and that
that.
puts it on the calendar, confirms the assignment, obligates myself and the client that that's the photo shoot date, and so that's how I've done it for the last 5 years, I guess, because I was advised that was a better legal terminology to use
Yeah, I like that.
than deposit.
I'm going to use that. That's
I'm
okay.
gonna use it too. It's gonna go in today.
How many days before the shoot do you require that, Alan?
I need to have that at least 14 days ahead of time. And if there's travel, that's a hard and fast thing. I have to have that 14 days, or I don't travel, because I'm not gonna book travel less than 14 days ahead of time without that deposit or that confirmation.
The other term that I sort of use with the deposit is notice to proceed, which I think is a legal term. So when they pay that deposit, then it's I don't know, binding something or other. I don't know. We're not lawyers.
But we talk to them every day, it seems like.
We do, don't we?
Do any of you send your invoice directly to accounting or anything, or do you send it to your client? Because okay, what I do is I always have some kind of thank you on the invoice, thank you for your business, that type of thing at the bottom of it. But then I always I email my my invoices, but I always have a cover email that says all kinds of nice things about how great it was to work with you, and I hope you like this and look forward to the next project. And I do a whole marketing email that is the cover for every one of my invoices that go out, just so it's another opportunity to communicate with your client in a positive way. I don't just send an invoice and say, hey, send me X number of dollars.
Well, I send an email invoice to my client directly that I expect them to pass on to the accounting department, and I also send one to the accounting department.
Yeah. Does anybody here use like Square?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Use anybody use Square invoices?
Yes.
I use blank bid, all mine. Blank bid.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you have it? I mean, does your client? And I've used it a couple of times. Any pushback from the Square invoice? Because sometimes the Square invoice they'll keep reminding you, to
It does.
Yeah.
That's very useful. And then
Yeah.
with WeTransfer, where I send transfer files,
Yeah.
that's set up with Stripe actually, which is similar to Square, and so that they have to make that payment, in order to download the files. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also, I've learned kind of the hard way that there's a psychological impact of sending a Square invoice. Some people are very happy to pay with a corporate credit card or something like that. But if things are moving a little slowly, more slowly than I would like, I'll send a Square invoice, and that will spur them to get me a check or make a direct payment. It is not something I ever would have thought of in advance as a strategy, but I find that it really works. It just gets their attention. Oh, this
Try
is
to get a card on file for everybody.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, excellent.
that's for deposits. I mean, that's for initial payments as well as the final payments.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always take that payment, the assignment confirmation with Square invoice, so they can just use their corporate credit card, and
Yeah.
everybody's got one, so that makes it really easy.
And I attach my original agreement to it as well, and then I make a note on it saying original agreement sent directly and attached here. So there's kind of no way out. And what I find is that in some cases they'll just forward that whole batch of things to the accounting department. And then when the accounting department gets back to me, now I have their direct information, which I wouldn't have had before. So all these things, I'm not saying I planned this out, but I do now because I've learned.
Yeah, that makes it so much easier, and that way you've got a direct line if something goes south. And if it gets to be a little bit late on things, I'll just give the accounting department a call and say, just checking to see if this has made its way to your desk. Have you seen this invoice yet? And that's a very friendly way of saying, this is late, it needs to be paid. And that usually takes care of it. And a lot of times they'll just give me a credit card over the phone and take care of it that way. So
Yeah.
I don't
I always use the phrase.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I host my site on Zenfolio, which gives me the ability to set up a password that you have to have the password in order to download the photographs. I have always sent the password with my invoice, and I have yet to be burned. But if I were to get burned a time or two, what I might do is just withhold the password until the invoice is paid. That gives them the opportunity to view the photographs and just make sure that they're getting what they've ordered, and give me some feedback on anything that we need to correct or give them a better value on. But that's an option. Does anybody else have password locked for downloading?
Well,
No,
PixieSet does that.
give them a gallery
using
that they
that.
log into
Yeah.
the site. Well, the download is usually Dropbox, and that's after they've paid.
Mm-hmm.
You could do it with Hightail. I use Hightail for delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And Hightail
I've
makes
done
it
that
possible.
before. Yeah.
You can't view the photos on it, but you can.
Yeah, we talked last meeting about posting previews on PixieSet, and you can actually set that up to for people to make payment and download directly from PixieSet if you want to do it that way. And that's where I host my previews, so people can see the preview set and then go download them and make the payment. They make the payment and then they download them. As far as the way in my system, that's the way it works.
Is that tied to the Pixie kind of hunt for infringement?
No, completely different
Something?
company. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Different company entirely. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your participation today. I think we better wrap this up. It's been a good discussion, a lot of good information really fast. A lot to digest here for those who listen to this. And I think I'll probably go back and review some of the things we've talked about. I will be sending out that checklist if you're interested in it. I'm going to send that out generally to the membership. You can use it as a template if you want to. and hopefully that might be useful to you. I put the licensing information that I use in the chat window on this broadcast. If you want to copy that, that's there. If you want to have it separately, let me know. And we'll hope to see you next time. If you got any great ideas for a discussion next month, something really pressing that we'd like to talk about, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll come up with something from suggestions via email from the members who choose not to join us here every month. So we'll see what happens.
I love that.
Yeah.
I suggest something, then they're not there for it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what happens.
I think I did that one. Yeah.
Again, thanks to everyone for joining. Hope you have a great time, and we'll stick around for another few minutes here to chat if you'd like to on the backside. Thanks.
Always educational. Always get a lot of good notes from each meeting.
You should just take a picture and send them out.
Yeah. Take care.
This has been another episode of A Photographer's Life. If you've enjoyed this program, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. A Photographer's Life is brought to you by the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This episode is copyrighted and may not be used in full or in part without the written permission of the AIAP. Please join us again soon for another inside look at the world of professional architectural photography.